Okay, so today's lesson is on checkings and savings accounts. So some of the things we're going to cover today are the difference and advantages of single and joint accounts. And the second one, describing how checking accounts work, including solutions to overdraft. And the third one, being able to calculate interest or simple interest using the simple interest formula. So this is pretty big part of the semester is talking about banking and accounts, whether they're checking, savings, or loans or credit cards. A lot of what we do in the rest of the semester deals with banks, and getting loans and stuff. So it's going to be important to understand the difference between all of the different types of accounts. Now, the first ones we're going to talk about today are checking and savings accounts. Now, both checking and savings accounts you can have by yourself, or you can actually have joint accounts. A single account would be just to one person, whereas a joint account can have multiple people on the same account. What that means is that multiple people would have access to the money that is in a single account. So there are advantages and disadvantages to single and joint accounts. Obviously, with a single account, the advantage is that you have access to your money and no one else has access to your money. You know exactly what's in there, and there shouldn't be anything missing or anything that's wrong with the account if it's just you on there. Now, the disadvantage is if you need to have more than one person access the account, they're going to have to go through you. This doesn't work very well for businesses. Businesses often want multiple people to have access to accounts so that they can make purchases without having to go through a single person. So that's the advantage of a joint account. A joint account is more than one person having access to the account. And with joint accounts, you can have as many people as you want have access to the same account. Now, disadvantages obviously is that you really have to keep an eye on the account, because with so many people having access to it, you really have to make sure that everything is logged properly and accounted for in the account. So that's single and joint accounts. So the main focus today is going to be checking and savings accounts. So people bank for really two main reasons. They want a checking account and they want a savings account. People use banks because it's a safe place to keep your money. I mean, we don't want to walk around with hundreds of dollars, in our pockets all the time, and it makes for losing your money very easy. So having a bank, it securely saves your money in an account that you have access to from really anywhere with the use of a card, a debit card, or you can access ATMs, but you really have access to your money wherever you are in the world, and that is a nice thing to have, as opposed to trying to carry your money on you at all times. The other thing is savings accounts actually allow you to not only save money, obviously, but the banks oftentimes will pay you to keep your money there. Now, you can't spend money from your savings account, but that's what the checking account's for. But you can transfer money from savings to checking to be able to spend it. So the big difference between checking and savings is checking is where you can spend your money. The money that is in your checking account is the money that you have available to spend. Whereas a savings account, you cannot spend from. Also, the difference here is that with a savings account, the bank actually pays you what is called interest. Interest can be made. Now the question is, why would a bank pay you for them to keep your money? And the question's pretty easy. The answer is pretty easy. Banks don't make money off their checking and savings accounts. They make money off of lending money to other people and making interest off of those. So what they do is they try to get you to put your money into their accounts. That's why they offer them for free. And then they take your money and give it out to other people in the form of loans. And they can make tons of money off interest in loans. Now, the other part of that is, well, I mean, if they don't have my money, what happens if I want my money and they don't have my money? And that's where it comes in. After the Great Depression, banks were insured by the federal government. Because of the failure of the banks during the Great Depression, the federal government stepped in afterwards and said, we're going to insure all the banks. So if for some reason you go to the bank and you want your money and they don't have the money to give you, you can turn to the federal government and you can get your money from them. So checking, that's where you spend money. You can have a debit card or checks or any of those different ways to access your money. You can even pay bills from the app online. And savings you cannot spend from, but you can make interest off the money that is in there. Okay. The other part of this is, what do you do? What happens when you go to pay for something and you don't have enough money in your account? And this happens, and it will happen, and it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, it'll happen. It's happened to me multiple times where you just forget how much money is in your account and you go to spend it and you do what is called overdraft. Overdraft is when you spend more money than is in your account. And normally the bank will pay it for you. So the bank will say, "Hey, you went negative on your account, and we'll cover it, but we're going to charge you a fee." So most banks will cover your overdraft, but there is a fee involved. So there is a fee assessed. And it varies from bank to bank. Most banks are around $35, anywhere from $20 to $35 per charge that you go over. So there are ways to prevent overdrafting. Obviously, we don't want to go negative, and sometimes you just forget, and sometimes it happens. But there are ways to prevent it from actually happening and incurring all those fees, because you have to think about it. Every time you charge your card and it's in the negative, you're going to be charged an overdraft fee. So you might charge 10 things before you realize that your account's negative, and then you've just accumulated $300 in overage charges on top of the negative money that you still owe. So you want to set up something or some way of protecting yourself. And there is several ways that we can do that. So one way that we can protect ourselves from overdraft is to set up on your card the ability to have your card declined. Oh my gosh, can't write. Have card declined. Now, what this means is that if you go into your settings on your account, you can actually set it to where if there isn't enough money to cover the charge, the card actually will be declined. And so what that means is if you go to pay for something, the person who's running your card will get a message saying the card has been declined. That means that you don't have the money to cover it, and that way you don't incur any overage charges. But sometimes you actually need what is being purchased. So some people ignore the decline, not ignore the decline, but they don't change their settings. So their card will just charge whatever you charge, and we'll worry about the negatives later. But you can have your card declined, and that is a setting to protect yourself from overdraft. The other way is to link an account. And this can be a savings account, or a credit card. So what that means is if for some reason you don't have enough money in your account and you go to swipe it, it will pull money from your savings account. Or if you link it to a credit card, it will charge the credit card whatever the difference is in what you have in your account. So these are ways to set up overdraft protection so that you don't incur those fees. I'm telling you right now, because from personal experience, and you can ask pretty much anybody, and this has happened to them, any adult at least, those overage charges can add up. And it's one of those things that every time you charge, and you might not even know it, you might overdraft at Meijer, and then on the way home get gas and get dinner and whatever. And by the time you get home, you've made 4 charges in the negative, and now you owe, $140 just in fees, not including the amount you went negative. So we're going to calculate some of that in the problems later here. But the last thing we're going to talk about is simple interest. Most savings accounts calculate interest in what is called simple interest. Now, it is a small fraction of accounts. Most total accounts actually use compound interest, which we'll talk about next class. But for the sake of savings accounts, we're going to do some simple calculations with simple interest. So savings accounts are important for 2 reasons. One, obviously what we just talked about, is it can be linked for overdraft protection, and also savings accounts make interest. So essentially you're making money on your money. You're basically lending the bank money, and they're paying you in interest to keep your money in that account. The more money you have in there, the more money you can make. So usually there's a minimum balance that you need to have in your savings account for it to be free. Otherwise, they will charge you for the savings account, but it's pretty minimal. It's like in some banks, it's like $5 that you need to keep in there for it to be free, which is pretty easy. So simple interest is a formula. So a simple interest formula, and you're not going to have to memorize this. This is something you'll always be given, but it is I equals PRT. Now, you might have seen the formula before, but might not remember what it stands for. I is pretty obvious. I is interest. P stands for principal, and principal is the amount of money that you start with. So it's your initial deposit or whatever money you put in the bank. That is what's called the principal, or the starting amount. R stands for rate. Now you do have to be careful. Rate needs to be in decimal form. So oftentimes it might say the interest rate is 4%. But when you go put it in the formula, it needs to be a decimal form. So 4% is not 4. It's actually 0.04. And that's how it needs to be written. And T is time in years. So time is always in years. So whenever you're doing this, you need to make sure that time is measured in years. So we're going to use that formula right there to calculate some simple interest problems. But the first question is dealing with checking accounts. So if we look at Allison here, she has a balance of $2,300 in her checking account. So if she deposits a $425.33 paycheck and a $20 rebate check and a personal check for $550 into her account, then she wants to receive $200 cash back. You need to be able to calculate what's going to be in the account. This happens all the time. People go to the bank, and you start out with $2,300. And you make a deposit. This is pretty much the order it goes, and you make a deposit for $425.33. So that's going to add to it $425.33, and then you have a rebate check for $20. So a rebate check is $20, and you have a personal check that you received for $550. And after all is said and done, at the end, it's going to ask you, would you like any cash back? And you're going to be like, yes, I do. I'd like $200. And $200 cash back actually subtracts from your account. So basically, you take $2,300 and add all those up and then subtract by $200. And you'll get the answer, which is, I think it's 3,095. Let me just verify that real quick. 2,300 plus 425.33 plus 20 plus 550, and then subtract 200. Yeah, it's 3,095.33. And that would be the balance in her account after all is said and done. The rest of these questions deal with simple interest questions. So calculating simple interest, we obviously need to use the formula, but we do need to be careful and figure out what the question is asking for. The question is asking for us to calculate the amount that would be in her account after 2 years for each bank. Now, we're not going to do this middle part here. We're not going to put the interest rates in ascending order, but we are going to calculate the amount that would be in the account for each one of these banks. So we're going to go to our formula. Okay. So the first one, here's our formula, I equals PRT, and we're going to plug everything in. I is what we're looking for. Principal is what we start with. Okay, it says we started with $5,000, so put 5,000. Our interest rate, is right here. 4.25%. Now, if you're confused as to how to put the percent to a decimal, you just divide by 100. So if I take 4.25 and I divide by 100, that gives me 0.0425 as my rate. And time, it says right here, is 2 years. So if I calculate all that, 5,000 times 0.0425 times 2, you end up getting an interest of $425. Now, it's not so now that's not what that's not what they're asked. They weren't asking for the interest. They were asking for how much was in the account. So in order to do this, we need to take the $425 and add it to the original part of the account. So we had $5,000 to start. We gained $425 in interest, so we would have $5,425. Now we could do the same thing over here for G Save Bank, and we can equals PRT, so same principle. of 5,000. The rate, though, now is 4.375. So divide by 100, you get 0.04375 in the same 2 years. If you multiply that out, you do get $437.50, which added to the original 5,000 is 5,437.50. So you can see that there are differences in these accounts. It's $12, but of course that is just over 2 years. And the more money that's in there, the bigger difference you'll see, and over the longer amount of time, the bigger difference you'll see. So it's important to pay attention to interest rates when you are doing anything that actually involves interest. Okay, let's look at an example here. Number 3. Okay, number 3, you're going to calculate simple interest, and you got to be careful here. So it's asking how much simple interest is earned. So it's asking for interest. So in the equation I equals PRT, it's actually looking for what the interest is. So we can plug in our principal, which is 4,000. That's what we start with. Our rate is right here, 5.2%, but as a decimal, that's 0.052. And our time of 3.5 years, which is 3.5. When we calculate that, we do get $728. Okay, pretty basic math here. And we can even do the other one, which is $2,000 times a rate of 5%, which is 0.05. Now this one gets a little tricky with the time because it's not in years, and you need your time to be in years. So how do we figure out 7 months in years? Well, we do know that there are 12 months in 1 year. So if I just do 7 divided by 12, that gives me 0.58, or sorry, yeah, 0.58 years. So 7 months is 0.58 years. And then when you multiply all that, you do get $58.33. So that's how you calculate simple interest. It's pretty easy, pretty basic. They do start to then ask different questions. So looking at these problems here, you have to be careful and make sure you understand what they're asking for. Because in number 4 it says how much principal interest must be deposited. How much principal must be deposited to earn $1,000 in interest in 2 years at a rate of 5%. So this one is asking for how much principal. So when you're doing the I equals PRT, it's actually looking for that number right there. So you have to plug in, you have to plug in this number, and this number. Well, it does give us the interest. It's right here, $1,000 in simple interest. So I is 1,000. P we don't know. R is right here, 5%, so 0.05. Time is 2 years, which is right there. So we can multiply these ones right here. 0.05 times 2 is 0.1. So you have 1,000 equals P times 0.1. And then just simply divide both sides by 0.1. And this will tell you how much needs to be in the account for you to make $1,000 in simple interest over 2 years. And if you divide that, you end up getting P equals 10,000. So what that means is they would need to have invested $10,000 into an account for 2 years that makes 5% interest to earn $1,000. Last one. Derek here has a bank account that pays 4.1% simple interest. The balance is $910. When will the account grow to 1,000? So this is as complicated as it really gets. You need to understand what they are asking for. It says, when will the account grow to 1,000? So clearly they're looking for time. So if we do I equals PRT, they are looking for time. So interest. Now, if they had $910 and they want to know when it goes to 1,000, you have to be able to look at that and go, okay, how much interest did they accumulate? If I had $910 and I want $1,000, the difference between those is 90. Okay, if I already have 910 and I want to see when it gets to 1,000, then the interest that has been accumulated is only $90. Because 90 and 910 make 1,000. The principal is what we started with, which is 910. The interest rate is right here, 4.1%. So 0.041 and then times t. So we can multiply these, 910 and 0.041. So 910 times 0.041. is 3731. So I have 90 equals 3731t. So I can divide by 3731, divide by 3731, and that gives me t equals 2.41 years. And that's how we do simple interest. You have some problems here to practice. There is an answer key that is available. You can see all the answers there on the right-hand side. You are going to have an outcome quiz when we return on Friday. So if you I would highly recommend that you go through here, and if you have any questions, we can answer them on Friday, but you are going to have an outcome quiz on this on Friday, so just be aware of that. Please do the questions here, and then what you're going to do is for your e-learning assignment, you're going to submit these into Canvas. So this is your e-learning assignment. Do the work here. I think there's 13 questions. I know the answers are there, but so I need to see your work, and then you're going to submit them into Canvas to show that you've done your e-learning assignment. That is it. I'll see you on Friday. Thanks.